Podcasting is a very terrible platform to launch if you have no audience. I was fortunate that I didn't really have a big audience myself, but I'd spent a long enough time around a handful of people that had big audiences that had gotten to know me for the very thing I was starting a podcast for. You always have one of those friends who, you have a favor and it's like you hold on to it forever. And then finally you're like, I'm launching a podcast. Can you help? And then just like tell your audience about this thing. I cashed all the favors in when I launched the podcast.
Dude, you're a pro now, I feel like, right?
What defines pro?
I mean, you're podcaster creator for a living, right?
Yes. My wife quit her job and she is now joining the company. So it is now both of us are doing this full time, which is bananas.
It's really bananas because you probably don't remember the first time we met, but I do.
If I had to guess.
Yeah, guess.
For some reason, I'm envisioning a room. Maybe it's just the Canada thing with Aaron Burry in the room.
I mean, that's possible. I don't even know I know Aaron Burry.
Like many, many moons ago. And I'm like, was that room in Ireland or was it at South by or was it just in San Francisco? I don't know.
You're not wrong.
Okay.
It was in Europe. It was in 2011, Le Web, Paris.
Ah, okay. I remember going to Paris. Let's see. Hold on.
I actually don't have a good memory, but when a photo comes up, I always zap back into that reality. And I remember being in a warehouse party with you, me, you, Chris Barrett, if you know who that is. He's a PR guy.
Okay.
And you were talking, I think you might have recently sold your company to Google. Is that possible? Was that around then?
Yeah, I think it was 2012, but in 2011, it could have been. I think we hadn't started, but we knew it was happening.
Anyway, as far as I'm concerned, I'm this like, it's in my head at least, I'm like country Canadian. And I meet this like, fast moving Silicon Valley guy who's knows everyone and who's building all this stuff and who's just really charming and just like knows where everything is going. And I was like, I need to be in San Francisco. What am I doing? And in my mind now, fast forward to 2023, you've abandoned, like you were at the pinnacle of Silicon Valley, building startups, raising venture, and now you're doing creation stuff. How does it feel?
Yeah, apologies if anyone's watching the video because I was so into this moment that I didn't know if we were actually recording and I'm like distracted looking at iPhoto trying to find photos of this trip to Paris. But I was at a conference yesterday in San Francisco and it was like a VC tech startup conference. And I was like, do I even belong here anymore? Like I know everyone here, yet it feels like it's a whole different world now. I'm like, yeah. So it feels kind of fun to be I'm not at the ground floor of creator world, right? Like it seems like millions of creators have done this before, but for me, it feels as exciting and new as it did back in, 2008, when I first learned that people build tech companies for a living. And I was like, I need to go do that. So I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun learning a whole new industry. I find that most people don't treat the creator world like a business. So I meet all these podcasters that are like, oh, growth. Like I never really thought about it. Like monetization. Like I just thought you just, go to a network and they put ads in. I didn't know there was a better, more optimal way. And so applying the principles of like high scale venture startup to a new business that hasn't really taken that is fun. That I love.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of creators who look at it just like from an art perspective. I'm passionate about this particular thing. I'm going to create videos about it or podcast. And then there's like this new wave of creators like yourself who know a little bit of the art, but also the science. And you're kind of putting it together and making money and also kind of doing some art.
Yeah. Yeah, the art thing's interesting because I think I meet a lot of creators who are much younger. They're like, 24 and they're grinding and they tell me, oh God, what's a new tactic for TikTok? And I was like, do you like making TikTok videos? And they're like, no, but like, I feel like there's such an opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing a thing just because like it makes a lot of money. I have to want to do it. Like the bar being, I don't know, almost 15 years older than these people, in some cases 20. It's like, I have to really want to do the thing. And so it almost like forces the art. Like there are people who don't care about money and do the thing they want to do always. And then there are people who start out and they're like, I don't have any money and I really care and I'm really grinding. And then there are people who've had enough success that they're like, look, if I didn't make money, we would need to move. Like, we do not have enough money to live our lifestyle for the rest of our lives. Uh, but we have enough that we can just like focus on things we love to do. And so it's allowed me to treat it a little bit like an art in a way that 10 years ago, maybe I would have been chasing making TikTok videos. But some people I know that are making TikTok, they don't even like doing it. They're just like, they feel like that's the opportunity. I like the art piece.
So it's been what, couple years since you started this
Two
journey?
2 years in May, so a couple months passed. But yeah, 2 years.
And could you share a little bit about like the all the hacks empire? Like how's it going?
Yeah. So when I started, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Right. I just knew I had a full time job. I just knew that I love going really deep on all the things. Like, you know me personally, but for people who are listening who don't, it's like, if someone asks a question like, what's the best way to get auto insurance? I'm like, I either know the answer because I've already done it, or I'm like, I need to know the answer. And I'll go spend 50 hours the next week going to learn everything you can possibly learn about auto insurance. I'll call 10 brokers. I'll get a quote from every company. I'll read the policy terms. And then I'll come back and be like, you guys, I went back and I looked it up. Here is everything you need to know. That's just like my personality. During the pandemic, I didn't get to share any of that with anyone. Yet I also had more time than ever to do that kind of research. And so I just felt like I needed an outlet. And I didn't have the dinner parties to be like, hey guys, did you hear about this new crazy thing? I just accumulated 4 million points doing this crazy, like I just didn't have a place to share all that. And so I was like, maybe I'll try a podcast. I'd started writing blog posts and I think I wrote two. And then I stopped. And then, I've been on Twitter since I got excited about tech in 2007, but I just never became like the social media person. But when I was running a startup, I went on a bunch of podcasts as a guest to talk about financial planning. And I was like, it just felt like the most natural medium for me. So started as a podcast, and I had a newsletter with,
Sorry.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Isn't starting as a podcast like the worst possible idea? Like
Yes.
when people ask me like, "Oh, hey, like I really want to start a podcast," I'm always like, "Before you start a podcast, you need distribution."
Yes. So the thing about podcasting that is worse than basically almost every other platform is that there is no built-in growth mechanism. There is no built-in easy sharing mechanism. It's like if you're reading an email and you're like, I have an idea of a friend that would want this, you hit like F, type 3 letters, and hit command enter. Depending on what email provider you have, it's pretty quick. On a podcast, you have to like take your phone out of your pocket. Then you have to like go back to the episode page and then go back to the show page and then hit the share button and then click like the text message button and then type your friend's email text in. And text feels very invasive. And by the way, both of those are still way harder than if you just post a video on YouTube and it seeds it out to 100 people and they love it, then it's just going to seed it to more and more and more people. And that happens on lots of social platforms. Podcasting, it's like there's nothing. So yes, you're right. Podcasting is a very terrible platform to launch if you have no audience. And I was fortunate that I didn't really have a big audience myself, but I'd spent a long enough time around a handful of people that had big audiences that had gotten to know me for the very thing I was starting a podcast for. So when I said, hey, you always have one of those friends who, you have a favor and it's like you hold on to it forever. And then finally you're like, I'm launching a podcast. Can you help? And then just like tell your audience about this thing. I cashed all the favors in when I launched the podcast. And I had a thing that I was known for in like money and financial optimization. So I could go on a few other podcasts and say, hey, I want to talk about this thing. And I was actually, an expert on that topic. And so I think I had a little bit of an edge there. And then I had this mailing list from, a couple different aspects of my life. I started a life updates one, a travel one, and I kind of let everyone know on those mailing lists, hey, I've got this new thing. That gave me enough of a jumping off point that I could build an audience. But without that, I meet people that are like, I have this podcast, I'm on episode 100, I get about 50 downloads an episode. And it's like, you could do 100 episodes of a podcast and still get only 50 downloads. Like, Most people that produce 100 pieces of content on any platform end up getting a bigger audience, but podcasting is so hard.
So what's your advice for people who want to start a podcast, don't have distribution and don't have, well-known people to plug their pod?
Look, I don't think anyone should start a podcast if you don't enjoy a podcast, because for the first year, podcast made no money. So, like, yes, I might have had listeners, but like it was still a huge amount of work and the return was doing the podcast. So, I wouldn't advise anyone to start a podcast as like a business opportunity in general, unless you have an audience. So, if you don't have an audience, start it because you love it. I think even with a tiny podcast, I've met a ton of people who've been able to use it as a way to ask for a conversation with someone that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. So if you really are a curious person and like learning from people, use the podcast as a platform to have those conversations. You would be amazed at how many people will say yes. Many of them will also say no, but some of them will say yes and say, "Yeah, I'd love to come on your podcast." So I didn't know Morgan Housel is a writer in personal finance world. And before the podcast had launched with no listeners, I shot him a cold email and was like, "Hey, I got this podcast coming out. It's about life and money and optimization. Will you come on?" He's like, "Yes." He didn't know that it had anything behind it. So I think that for that reason, it was great. And a lot of people can do that and not care if there's an audience. I've met plenty of people that have podcasts. Like, I have so many interesting conversations. I've built an amazing network. I don't care if there's listeners. It doesn't matter to me. So know why you're doing it. Maybe it's just a creative outlet for you and it doesn't matter if anyone listens. Like, it just is a platform for you to have a conversation in public or just get stuff off your mind. So I would say start it not for the reason of a business, but if you do start it, there are some things that I think give you an edge. So one, find a thing that you can be known for and leverage that to go on other podcasts where you're actually an expert. And don't just send the email that I get 100 of every week that's like, "Hey, can I be a guest? I did a thing." Be like, "Hey, I listen to your show. I understand what you're looking for in a guest, and I understand the kinds of topics you talk about. Here are a couple bullet points for what I think we could talk about that would make for a really great conversation. I'm happy to do some more prep work." Whenever I get those emails, I'm like, 50% of them convert. Whenever I get
Totally.
the email that's like, "I started a business like building, lawnmowers," and I'm like, "But that has nothing to do with my show. Like, I don't even know why you sent this email. I don't even reply. I just archive it." But when someone says, "Hey, I've listened to 10 episodes of your show, and I know that you like talking about optimizing areas of your life. I've actually optimized this one area more than anyone. Here's what I know. Here are some of the takeaways your listeners will get." Those convert really well. Funny enough, I found that the bigger the name of the guest is completely almost inverse proportional to how well my listeners like the episode. So it doesn't. I care more about the content than the name of the person on the show.
Really, because that's really counterintuitive.
It's very counterintuitive, and I think it's very unique to my show. If I had a show that's like, let's like hear all the juicy details of the lives of my guests, people are more interested in the juicy details of the lives of people that they've heard of, that they admire. But if mine is tell me all the tactics, I did an episode with a guy that I couldn't even find a lot of information about rental car hacks. People loved it. And then I did an episode with Tony Hawk, who I admire. If you're on video, you can see I've literally a signed skateboard of Tony Hawk in my background. And it was super interesting, but I wouldn't say that episode delivered as many tactics. Tony, I think maybe I could have figured this out in advance, but he's one of those. There are some people, I could compare him to Kelly Slater. And it's like some people are like very good at what they do and they are very intentional about how they do it. And some people are just naturally so good at what they do. And it's not because they're intentional. They're just, otherworldly. Tony is the latter. It's like, "What's your routine?" He's like, "I skateboard." And like you ask Kelly Slater, "What's your routine?" He's like, "I wake up at this time. I take this supplement. I do this thing." And I'm like, "Do you take
Right.
any supplements, Tony?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got to take like cholesterol meds because like that's what my doctor told." Like
Totally.
he's not someone who does that, and it works. I mean, obviously, he's like everyone listening knows who he is. Like he's good at what he does, but I wasn't able to deliver. I was able to deliver a fun conversation, and like I think it's a good listen, but it wasn't the episode where you're like, "My life has changed after listening to this, and I'm going to do these 7 things different." Or I now have. I mean, I've gotten emails where it's like, "I listened to that episode and I made $14,000. That was pretty cool." Or like, "My marriage is better," or "My business is stronger." That's what I want to deliver. And so that honestly, people are coming to the podcast for me. They're not coming for the guest.
Walk me through how this works. So basically, you interview someone on the pod. it becomes popular because people are sharing it with a lot of people? Is that what makes a popular episode?
A weird thing that I was talking about yesterday was that when you look at someone on social media or on YouTube and you're like, how big is their audience? You're drawn to this number that is usually their number of subscribers, their number of followers, something. Podcasters, there's no public number of followers. Okay. So the only number people share, and they don't even share it publicly that often, is how many downloads you get per episode or how many downloads you get a month. That number is completely different from the number of people who listen to the podcast or who subscribe to the podcast. Let's say that better. So if you're going to compare the number of people who listen to a podcast to the number of people who, a YouTuber, you'd look at how many videos on or how many views on average does their video get, which depending on the YouTuber and the type of video could be 4% or 10% of their overall subscriber base. I think for my podcast, if I had to guess, and I don't actually know the numbers, and they vary drastically. On Apple, it's like 50% of the subscribers on Apple listen to an episode on average, and on Spotify, it's like 12%. And those numbers are only really available for Apple, Spotify, and Google. So for all the other platforms, which is like a meaningful percentage of listens, I have no idea. My guess is I have about 5 times as many subscribers as I do listeners on each episode. So an episode that does well is an episode where a higher percentage of the people that subscribe to the show listen to it. And an episode that does poorly is one where a lower percentage. But that range, by the way, on like day one downloads is anywhere from like 13 to 17,000 downloads on day one. So it's not like, and on average, it's like 15. So like a bad episode is like 10% worse and a good episode's like 10 or 20% more. It's not like YouTube where you're scrolling through someone's feed history and you're like, wow, this guy's got 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 175,000, 10,000. Like it's a very tight band. So, the only other metric I have is how many people are still listening at the end of the episode. So how many people did I lose? So if I compare, okay, how many people downloaded it is a proxy for like, is the topic or the title interesting? And how long did they make it in the episode is a proxy for like, was it a good episode?
Do you spend a lot of time on titles?
Probably like 20 minutes. I think it's some combo of me, my wife, my virtual assistant, and ChatGPT. And
Right.
like between the four of us, we're bouncing ideas off. And then it's usually my wife and I at 9 p.m. taking all the data from all those sources. And then we both are like, that's it. But I don't like A/B test the title to see which one's going to perform better. Or I don't have like I have a data backed opinion on a lot of things because I like using analytics. I don't know on titles. You look at Tim Ferriss, his titles are like 4 lines long, and you look at some other shows and the titles are like 8 words. And you ask them why, and they're like, yeah, I think it's just so much better. The SEO of podcasting, like almost nothing is indexed except your show title. So, you could argue that really long titles will help people searching for random things in the App Store. So they're not wrong about putting that in there. Spotify will index your summary of your description of the episode, but Apple only indexes the title.
So if you want to start a podcast and you want to create a popular podcast, what recommendations do you have for people in terms of things that they can do to, increase their probability of success?
Honestly, I think the most important thing is to find some way to determine if you actually have like good content, because you could spend all the time in the world growing a podcast, but people aren't going to stick around. It's going to be so much harder. So you need to find if you have a good podcast. So first off, can you actually explain why your podcast is different to other people? Like try that, try to see if you can convince people about why your podcast is different. Because it's late enough. It's early enough in podcasting that there's room for more podcasts. It's late enough that you can't just like be a success because you have one. And very often I meet people and they're like, my podcast is great because I'm going to interview people and they're going to share all these awesome things. And I'm like, okay, well, there are a lot of podcasts that do that. What's different about your podcast? Like, why is someone going to listen to it? Do you have a different perspective? Like, do you have a co-host and you do interviews in a different way? Are you only interviewing a specific person in a niche where there aren't a lot of people doing that content? Like, what is different about it? So you could have a different podcast and still suck at podcasting. So
So
like,
you might
go
think
ahead.
I'm crazy, but I don't really look at my metrics for my podcast. So I look at it every 3 months and I just look at downloads and which platforms. Like once every 3 months I'm like, okay, am I going in the right direction? I'll look at it for 10 seconds and then I'll close the tab.
I don't
And
think you're crazy.
I'm just like, I'm not here for like I think that first of all, I think in intuitively I could sense if the podcast is doing well because people are like tweeting episodes. I'm getting messages about, hey, I saw, I listened to this episode. It was really dope. And I realized when I first started the podcast, I was really, really into the metrics and I was trying to optimize everything. And it was just a lot less fun for me. Now I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to invite interesting people. They don't have to have the biggest audiences in the world. I'm just going to come up with a title that I think speaks to what this thing is. I'm going to post it on Twitter or on email when I think it makes sense. And I mean, I lost like my co-host. I lost like 6 or 8 months ago, who has almost more than 1.5 million collective followers, or maybe even more, 2 million collective followers. So I saw like a drop in downloads, and I just look every 3 months, and it's just been steadily increasing
That's
to
great.
where I'm and that's all I care about. Like, am I missing anything? Should I be? Should,
No, I don't
yeah.
even care anymore about downloads for me. The only thing I care about now that this is a business, this is like how we pay our bills. I'm like, are my sponsors renewing? That's the only metric I care about. And like, if our sponsors are not renewing, that means something's not working. Are we not growing fast enough? Are the reads not good? Like, if you treat it like a business, do I care? Like, if I had half the downloads, but I just kept all the people that are so excited and are supporting our sponsors, that's fine. Like, I'm doing the podcast not to be a celebrity, but I like doing it every week, and it takes time. So I need it to make enough money that I don't need to go get another job because then I couldn't do it every week. So I don't think you're wrong, but I think if someone listening is like, I have a podcast and I want to, you know, try to figure out what topics people like, there are ways that you could look at the analytics to try to figure out which episodes are doing better or which episodes do people listen to longer. I couldn't tell you on my own show, like, which episodes people listen to longer because I haven't looked at it because it's not a huge priority for me. The way I decide what I do for episodes is like, what am I interested in? And like, if I am interested in a new topic now, I'll do an episode on that. It's not as if people want more finance topics and I'm not interested in the topics they want to hear from, I'm like, I'm really sorry. That'd probably make for a fun episode, but it's just not interesting to me right now. And it's not going to be good content if I'm not interested. So I have no problem with you not looking at downloads at all. But if you're trying to figure out, can I get this to a place that I could quit my job? You probably want to look at those metrics because it's going to be really important.
I don't know, man. Like I hear stories about Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan basically he does like he spends a lot of time, of course, thinking about the guest and a lot of focus on the guest when he's interviewing the guest. But from what I understand, the guy is not really looking at metrics at all. He's just focusing on who's interesting to interview and then having really interesting conversations. And I wonder if that's the best way to do it. Like if the guy who has the most successful podcast of all time is barely looking at metrics.
Well, I think like what I said, my caveat was if you are at your day job and you're trying to figure out if I can quit my day job to do podcasting full time, like, and you have to pay bills, like you might want to know if the podcast has any path to paying your bills.
Yeah.
Do I think that but what I really think you should focus on is, do I have a good podcast? Because and I think the way you're going to have a good podcast is that if you love what you're doing. So the Joe Rogan strategy is absolutely what you should be doing. So I wouldn't say let the metrics dictate what you do, but let the metrics dictate whether you have a business or you have a passion project. And maybe you want to quit and just go all in and hope that it works. But at some point, you can't go to sponsors unless to monetize your show unless you have people that are listening to it. So you have to at some point look. Joe Rogan also has the luxury of having the largest podcast. So like he doesn't care if it goes up or down by 10% because he's probably making, what was his deal? Like 100 million. It was like, ridiculous amount of money. So yeah, if I was making that much money, I would never even look at the number. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter.
How much money do you think you can make on your podcast
In
as a business? Like
No,
as
no,
the
no, but
business?
eventually or
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Like
Yeah, I think when I think about the vision for what I want to build, and the newsletter is an interesting thing to mention because when I first started the newsletter, I was writing, it's kind of adjacent to the podcast, but it wasn't about the same topics. And then it all clicked for me when someone emailed me and was like, "Hey, I'd really love you to do an episode on insurance." And I was like, "Wait, I did a newsletter on insurance 2 weeks ago." Like, And they're like, "Oh, I don't subscribe to the newsletter." I was like, "Oh, you should." And they're like, "I don't like reading newsletters. I like listening to podcasts." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I had originally thought I had all these people and I was giving them content in different forms. And then I realized some people are newsletter people and not podcast people. Some people like scrolling TikTok and don't like either of the others. And so each platform, there are some people that like all the platforms and some people that only like one or two, but they're not fully overlapping circles. So I say that as a preface for I don't view all the hacks as a podcast. I view it as a place to disseminate information and knowledge and all kinds of things related to upgrading your life, your money, and your travel, and ideally in ways that you don't have to spend a lot of money to do. So I also think that there are things that I want to build that are way bigger than the podcast. So my view is there are a couple companies in the States that people join memberships of because they want to get access to great deals, right? People join AAA so that they can get car towing, so they can get, hotel and rental car discounts. People join AARP when they get old because there's all these great deals and discounts, all that stuff. There's like not a thing like that for our kind of Gen XYZ. And maybe it's like the Chase Sapphire Preferred or the Platinum Amex, but I don't know why something like that needs to be tied to your credit card company. And I don't trust credit card companies to be the most nimble and come up with the coolest deals. And they usually make really like tight single off partnerships. And there's a company that did this that you probably know called Founders Card, and they did it for entrepreneurs, but there's not a consumer version. And so what my wife, who's joining full time on all the hacks next month, and I are like really excited about is how can we build this community where you could become a member and get access to amazing benefits that far outweigh the cost of the membership. I don't want like a Patreon, give me $10 a month because you like me. I want a all the hacks membership, give me $100 a year because you save $1,000 a year by being a member. And it's like an obvious, no brainer. I think that if AARP has 39 million members, we could have 40 million members. And if 40 million members are paying, $100 a month, that's a pretty big business, I think. So or $100 a year, sorry. So what does that do? 4 billion in revenue? I don't know.
So if you're starting this community, you're going to use your newsletter podcast as distribution,
I think that's the early version, of course. Like I don't have another distribution channel. I think once like right now, the benefits of joining for a very specific niche, it's like we have a couple awesome deals that outweigh the price of the membership. But if you're not really interested in one or two of those companies, it's a support Chris or bet on the future or be a part of the community, right? We do calls with each other. We're taking a trip to Iceland. Like we're doing some cool stuff, but it's small. The moment we have like hundreds of amazing benefits is where it's like, well, I don't know if I care about a podcast or a newsletter. I just want it's like good ROI for anyone. So we're not near there. But I just say that when you're like, how big could this be? I was like, I don't know. Could it be doing $4 billion a year? Like, which I look, it's not doing that at all. It's like that is,
but it could.
it could, but
Yeah.
it's multiple orders of magnitude away.
Yeah.
Um, so I just don't view it as a podcast. I think the ceiling on podcasts, if you look at the top podcasts, and let's pull, a handful of extreme, number one, number twos out. I think the ceiling is probably somewhere around 10 to $15 million a year. And I think there are going to be, 100 shows at that level. And then everything below that is probably in the, not everything, but like the next tier down is like in the, 1 to 5 million kind of range, which is, there's probably 1,000, 5,000 shows maybe doing that. I don't know.
How well does Dave Ramsey do?
That is a question I don't know the answer to, but that dude has a lot of money.
Right?
Yeah, like a lot. Like Graham Stephan is a YouTuber that interviewed him, and they went a little deep on his finance. I mean, he has a products and courses and books, and his family has their own podcast, and he's built this whole media empire that I don't even think it makes sense to talk about in the same realm. Uh,
Well, I think it's similar in the sense of Dave Ramsey in the US is one of the leading, if not the leading, financial advice guy,
yeah,
right? And he does that. I think his biggest channel is the radio, I think. At least he used to be on the radio a bunch. And I know that he has an office building
Yeah, he has a
wherever
ton of
he
real
lives
estate.
that
He's bought
he
so
bought
much
it
real estate.
like in cash. He like it's like essentially a skyscraper. It's crazy.
Yeah, I just searched Dave Ramsey or Ramsey Solutions revenue, and the numbers they range from 20 to 515.6 million. So he's doing a lot. But my point there was just that I don't think it's not the pod. Like if you have a podcast and you don't aspire for it to be more than a podcast, you're not going to be at Dave Ramsey revenue numbers. That ceiling I gave was like the ceiling for people. Like look at Tim Ferriss, has a podcast, has sponsors, but hasn't tried to turn it into anything else. Like it is a podcast. He has a newsletter. He's not trying to make a company. He's not trying to have memberships. He's not trying to sell merch. He's not doing all the other stuff. And I think those kinds of businesses kind of cap out in the podcasting world with a handful of extreme outliers at the 10, 15 million range.
I gotta think that a Tim Ferriss is making $7 to $12 million a year on his podcast.
Yeah, I think his sponsor page on his website says, here's how much it costs to sponsor the podcast. So you could do the math.
Yeah.
Here's the cost to sponsor, how many sponsors in each episode, how many episodes a year. So I think it's in that range.
And I think if I'm him and I'm making, call it $10 million a year with pretty little costs, like and he gets to have interesting conversations. He does it his way. You were on the pod and he made you not pee for 3 hours, like.
To be fair, he gave me the offer, but we were having this crazy, interesting conversation. And then next thing you know, it's 3 hours. And I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. Like, I just can't do it.
I just peed myself.
Yeah, I mean, I say right now how cool it'd be to be running this thing and 4 billion. Along the way, I might be like, that's not the best use of my time. Like, I'm excited to not be running a company with lots of employees and lots of stuff. So, I have this great vision because I just love helping people optimize their lives. And there may be a point at which helping more and more and more people do it is not worth the payoff for me.
Yes.
But,
I was surprised to hear that, to be honest. Like coming from, you were at Wealthfront before, pretty big company now.
Yeah.
Raised hundreds of millions of dollars. You used to work at Google, big company. I'm surprised that you would even consider a role of, hey, I want to go build like $1 billion thing.
But I don't know if that $1 billion thing, by the way, has to have tons of employees. Maybe there's a path to it with I don't know. I mean, we're talking something so crazy.
We're just talking.
Yeah. But
just a couple of friends talking.
My wife was telling me the other night, it was like late and my au pair is planning a road trip. And she was asking me about rent. And she just said she needs to rent her car. And I was like, where are you going to rent it? Like I went down this rabbit hole and she was like, well, we're going to do this. And my friend from Italy, she's going on a road trip with her friend from Italy and they're both under 25. And I was like, well, there's underage rental fees, like when you're not 25 and you got to pay extra driver fees. So we went through this whole thing. By the end of the night, she's now a member of AAA, which saved her like $250. Now she's got this car rented. I made her an authorized user on one of our cards so she could use it and get the free rental car insurance coverage and get free status on Hertz so she gets an upgrade. And at the end of the night, my wife's like, why did you spend 3 hours like helping her save a couple $100? I was like, I can't help it. Like it's like, it wasn't that I thought it was a good ROI. It's just when people email me and they're like, hey, I want to try to do this thing. It's like almost impossible for me to not help people like find tweaks and ways to optimize their lives. And so that makes me think I will not stop. At the same time, I have 2 young kids and I enjoy spending time with them and I don't want to run a big company. So who knows where the ceiling of what I do is. And there are a lot of people out there who found really, different ways to run companies than the traditional Silicon Valley VC-backed company of you're the CEO and you have crazy burnout, you hire all these people and life's insane. So I don't think Founders Card, which is a company with, almost 100,000 members paying hundreds of dollars a year, I think they have like a couple employees. If I had to be honest with myself, we're probably not going to get to $4 billion in revenue. Like, let's be, I can have aspirations just to keep pushing me. But if we had 100,000 members, that'd be really cool.
I wonder if the prompt's almost like, how can I have max 10 employees, but have revenue per employee be something crazy, $100 million per employee?
Yeah,
you
the
know?
struggle here is the most optimal way to put money into a retirement account in the US is like solo 401ks are amazing, right? You can put like you can control all the features. You can have there's this thing called the mega backdoor Roth where you can put basically like $60,000 into your retirement accounts with tax benefits. But the rule of a solo 401k is you can have no employees. So in my mind, I'm like, how can I build a massive company with zero W-2 employees other than your spouse? Your spouse can be a W-2 employee, but no other employees. So I'm not going to decide the fate of what we're building on the tax advantage of a 401k, but it was a cool exercise in my mind, which is like what you just said, except instead of 10, it's zero.
Right. I like how you're like, yeah, I'm not going to decide the fate of my company based on this tax advantage account, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, it's like I like getting deals.
Yeah. It would be on brand.
Yeah, my right now we have a bunch of people working on different aspects. I have someone helping with sponsors. I have a virtual assistant. I've got a production crew, and they're all 1099. So I think it's possible. I like this new world. It's like no, it's not. Let's all go to the office, and it's a bit of a different vibe, but I've really enjoyed it. It's fun.
What other companies, podcasts, communities do you see and you're like, those guys are doing a cool job? Like, do you look up to any other?
I love what Peter Attia is doing. He is a doctor, and the thing he's doing, which I don't have another business to fund my life enough to do, is he flipped the model on its head and he says, "Hey, pay to be a member of our podcast, and I'm going to go to all these brands, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to charge you for me to promote. Normal traditional sponsor deal is, hey brand, I will talk about you to my audience and you will pay me a rate of X dollars per thousand people that download. And that rate is somewhere between 20 and $50. So he goes to brands and says, hey, give me an amazing deal. Funnel all the money you would want into the discounts that you're offering my members. And then he goes out and tells members on the pod, he says, hey, we just did this amazing partnership with, 8 Sleep. And you're going to get a deal that's so much better than the deal you're going to get and you hear on every other podcast because every other podcast is getting paid. That's not to say they're promoting a crappy product. I work with 8 Sleep. I love 8 Sleep. We have one, but they are paying me as a sponsor. He doesn't have that sponsor relationship, so he has amazing deals that he offers his members. I love that model. The downside is until you have a lot of members, the model doesn't work, right? Like you lose money. And so I can't make that transition now, but I see a vision like into the future where over time, maybe one of our ad slots switches to me talking about the partners, then two, then three, and eventually we get there. So I love his model of offering extra benefit, not necessarily extra content. I don't love this model where it's like, we're going to do 2 pods a week and one's paid and one's free. I'm like, I want to put all the content out there for free. And I want to find ways to offer products and services and other stuff to members. And the idea of them getting better deals is even more interesting. So I had a cool episode with David Chang, the chef of a restaurant in New York called Momofuku and a bunch of others. When we got connected, I found out he is, I don't know what the right word is, like a part owner in a company called Any Day, which makes microwave cookware. And during the pandemic, he was like, got obsessed with cooking at home and is kind of more of a home studio cook now and loves cooking in a microwave. And with this company, they created a whole line of cookware. And they were like, hey, we want to give a deal to your audience. And they're like, we could do an affiliate deal. And I was like, great, we'll do an affiliate deal for everyone. You get 15% off. But for members, you get 20% off. And I don't want the affiliate, so that's like a slow way to transition into it is like, as a member, you get a better deal than everyone else. And there are some people that are like, wait a second, that extra 5% is going to save me the cost of the membership. So I'll just join. And hopefully before the year of their membership might expire, we've launched a bunch of other things. And they're like, wow, I keep saving more money. This is so cool.
I think what you're touching upon is this shift towards like member only community experiences, which I think is where things are going. It's like, how do I drive as much value as possible for this member experience? Just like benefit, 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 so that like $10, $20, $50 a month makes it worth it. I saw on Twitter today, Andrew Wilkinson, the founder of Tiny Capital, has like a Twitter subscription and it's like I don't know, $40 or something, 30 or $40 a month. It's like a lot of money, I think, for a Twitter subscription,
Yeah.
for premium content for a really busy guy who might not, be tweeting in this private only area that much. But then I started reading, he's going to like pick someone random from his audience every month and have a 30-minute conversation and record the audio and post it. And there's like just like 10 different benefits where once you're reading like benefit 7 and 8, you're kind of like, all right, like swipe my credit card. And then
It's funny
you're
because when
and
you first said
yeah,
that, I was like, "Oh, I hate this idea of,
yeah.
like, all this gated content." But then I realized he's kind of just hacking the platform. He's like, "The platform is supposed to be sign up so that people pay for premium content." He's like, "Sign up. You might get these audio conversations as premium content," but he's adding more to it, and that's where I think it's interesting. He's
And he's
if you
gamifying it too, right? He's saying like there's almost like a slot machine nature to it, which is you could be one of the 1 in 500 people this month who has that conversation with me on Zoom.
I love
And
it.
the reality is that's probably 90% of the reason why people are joining. Like they're playing in the casino of Andrew Wilkinson, basically.
I did this. So I used to work at Wealthfront, and the Wealthfront cash account right now has, I think it's a 4.55% APY in the US. But if you refer someone to the cash account, they give you a boost of 0.5% up to 5.05%. So I was like, well, I want a boost. So I was like, this is a great product. I believe in it. I put my money in it. So I talked about it. And you can only get 4 referrals. And each referral I think is works for 3 months. So I told everyone, I was like, look, you can get this boost. Here's my referral link. And I got 4. And I was like, crap, I don't want any more. I can't get any more. Every person that uses my link is going to just be they'll get the 0.5% and no benefit to me. So I pinged all of our members and I said, hey, if any member has a Wealthfront account and they want a boost, go to this little Airtable form and put it in. And I still haven't found a site. I can't believe Bitly doesn't do this, but I found this site, Nimble Links. If someone knows a better one, let me know. But Nimble Links works for now. And you go in and you type all these referral codes. You get to choose whether it's random or like equally distributed. So I chose the redirect evenly. And now anytime someone goes to this URL, that I'll even say it here, allthehacks.com/WF cash, Wealthfront cash, WF cash. You'll just randomly get a referral link from one of our members. And so I've had our members reach out to me and be like, I'm now earning 50% more. And this is my down payment. Let's say they're saving, $200,000 for a down payment for a house. They're going to earn an extra $1,000 a year.
Insane.
They paid $99 for an annual membership to All the Hacks, and they're going to make $1,000 a year from 4 referrals. And so I'm like, what are all the other brands out there that have interesting referral programs? Credit cards are an interesting one. There are some cards where the referral deal is way better than the deal you get anywhere else. So let's collect all these. There was a window where Amex Platinum had a 150,000 point referral deal. So I went to members and I said, send me all your Amex Platinum referral links. In the pod, I was like, hey, there's this awesome deal to get 150,000 Amex points with a Platinum referral. Click this link. And now it's all my members are getting all the bonus points from these things. So I'm like giving them a distribution channel to earn or get perks or get referral stuff. Like they would have no platform to do that. I don't have those referral links. Like when I log into my MX account, my referral for the Platinum is like 50,000 points. So nobody wants to use my referral link. And so that's like a cool thing. So I push creators to think of unique ways that are on brand with them to come up with, products or services or experiences that are really, tied into their stuff that they could offer to people. And I think people are thriving for that. I'll give one more
Well,
example that's
yeah.
crazy. So and this is example of 2 things. One, I started my podcast. It was an interview show. And it was just me interviewing people about areas of their life to optimize. And it was great. I loved it. And then a few things happened. I was like, gosh, sometimes I couldn't find a guest that I thought could match the level of depth I've gone on something. So when we bought a fractional home, we bought like an eighth of a vacation home from a company called Picasso. I was like, I wonder what all of the different ways there are to buy a vacation home. I was like, I wanted to talk to someone who's researched timeshares, vacation clubs, the Inspirato Pass, everything. I couldn't find a single person that had done more research than me. And I was like, crap, I can't do this episode. And then I was like, what if I just do the episode? No guests, because I've already done all the research. So I did that episode and I was like, I should do this more. So then I started doing solo episodes. And then I was going on a trip to London and I was like, I haven't been to London since, and I have this maybe embarrassing, but I have this memory of walking around London with a Discman with Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. And I thought I was so cool. whatever age I was. And I was like, I don't know anything about London, clearly, because that was my last experience as a child. So I found someone online, this woman, Jess Dante, who has a channel called Love in London. And she's like, she makes travel guides. You can download them, you can buy them. She's like, makes all this content. I was like, do you want to record an episode about London and like everything someone needs to know about planning a trip to London? She's like, that'd be fun. So I did that. So then I met this guy who I had on the pod talking about travel because he is like this really well-known travel blogger. He's written lots of guidebooks, and we did another one on Iceland. Now, I want to go to Iceland, but I didn't have a trip planned. And at the end of that episode, I was like, God, I want to go to Iceland so bad. Like, and this guy knows, he's been to every restaurant, every hotel, every guest house, every fjord head. He spent 6 months and saw everything. He wrote like 4 Lonely Planets for Iceland. And by the end of the episode, I was like, I want to go on the trip you just told us to all go on. And he was like, why don't we just go on it? And then we were like, what if we just invite people to go on it? So now in March next year, we're going to Iceland. This guy, Brandon, who knows everything about Iceland, is hosting the trip. All the best guides and tour companies he's met in his, years of going to Iceland, almost a decade, are going to be leading the experiences and everything. So we're going to take an All the Hacks members trip to Iceland. That, like, I would never have thought of that. It kind of organically came up over time. But that's the kind of cool stuff that I want to build in a membership that is different than what I think the average Patreon is doing.
What it does is it builds, like, those people who are going to go on that Iceland trip are going to be loyal to you for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to do it or not, be it the person who's getting $1,000 a year for doing very little, like, they're going to see a new All the Hacks episode and pop up, and they're just going to be like, yeah, of course I'm listening to this. That's my boy, right? Like, it's about reverse engineering. That's my boy or that's my girl, whatever, right? I think it's really easy to follow other creators and just like kind of copy what they're doing and be like, oh, this person's doing a subscription, I should do a subscription. This person's doing a paid Substack, I should do a paid Substack. But it's really hard to be like, how do I just cram as much value as possible to people and just like follow your curiosity to what you think that they're going to want and just kind of test, get their feedback, iterate.
Yeah, get feedback is a big thing. We did a survey, and I was like, how do I make sure podcast listeners fill out a survey? Right? It's a lot to get a podcast listener to do anything. They're like, maybe they're on a run. So I'm like, I create this URL, allthehacks.com/survey. And then I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. My audience loves travel, points, miles. So I was like, I'm going to personally transfer 10,000 Capital One points to anyone who takes to someone who takes the survey. And then I also cashed in some points for 2 United tickets anywhere in North America, Caribbean, Hawaii. And I was like, I'm going to pick someone that fills out the survey and they're going to get 2 free tickets on United. Someone else is going to get some Capital One points. I reached out to some sponsors. Viori's like, we're going to give $100 gift card to someone. Now, all of a sudden, there's like tangible things you can win from taking a short survey. And I didn't ask people, what do you want me to do? I was like, what are you passionate about? What are you excited about? Like, what do you, questions to try to really get at it. And that was kind of what inspired some of this. People are like, I love traveling. I love unique experiences. And I was like, ooh, people want to travel and get unique experiences. Yeah, I could interview someone and talk about how they set it up. What if we just gave it to them? And so I could see a world where, I don't know, 2025, there might be 10 All the Hacks trips. I might not go on all of them, but you could be 100% certain that the person leading each one of those is going to be so dialed in to create the most unique experience, get the best deal, and make it just a once in a lifetime trip to that place. And I think listeners gave me some of these ideas, but you've got to get that feedback. Whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on email, the platform doesn't matter. But if you can find out what really gets the people in your audience going, and you can build products and services around that and not be afraid to test things out. I'm a nerd. People haven't picked that up. You're not listening. And I like credit card points. So I made this crazy spreadsheet where I put like 50 credit cards in, what they earn in all the categories, and I put how much money I spend in every category. And as you checked the credit cards, it would go in and say which one has the best earning for each category, how many points will I earn, and it tells you at the end, based on the 1 to 15 credit cards you picked, how many points per dollar am I earning? It's like, if you have the Amex Gold, now your grocery is getting 4 points per dollar. And I was like, talked about it. Someone was like, can you share that with me? And I was like, I don't know. It took me a lot of time. So I put it online. I created a ConvertKit product page, and I said, pay whatever you want, $1. I spent enough time on this that if you don't think it's worth $1, fine. don't buy it. We had like 100 people buy like a Google sheet, like so. And if you remember, I was like, just log in, and I put a link right here in the member dashboard, so like you
By
can
the
get
way,
it for
I
free.
love that model, by the way, the pay what you want model. It's I call it the Radiohead in Rainbows model.
I'm
Do you
guessing
kn
that's like an album they sold for whatever you wanted to pay.
It must have been in like 2004, like the peak of pirating music. Radiohead was like, go to this website, download this album for free, but download it from us. And if you like the album, how about you pay something? And they did an analysis at the end what the average person paid. The average person paid like $7 or $8. And when you look at that versus, what they were selling the album, what they would have sold the album for, which I think was like $9.99, like they actually made more money because they got more distribution, free distribution,
And they probably
and
got
they also,
it didn't
yeah,
go
they
through some
didn't
network,
go through
and
it. So they were stoked.
I love that.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think is crazy is that one person, I was looking through, we had all these sales. The person who paid the most paid $100, but the membership is $99. So I emailed them and I was like, you could have gotten this for free if you became a member. So like, let's just get you in the membership. Like,
Yeah, but that's such a it's actually, I don't know who that was, but that's actually such a smart way to get on your radar. Like if you want to get on some busy person's radar and they have like a pay what you want thing, pay as much as you can.
yeah, I've heard of people that did this for, maybe it was Huberman Lab, or maybe it was the Founders Podcast, but they were like, we have this pro tier where you can pay anything. And someone just like, it was like, it's $10 a month, or $100 a year, and someone just paid $10,000 or something. I think it was Huberman Lab because they fund research, and so it's
Right.
like a little bit of a nonprofit-y kind of angle. And it was just like, had they put a premium tier of $500, they would have never seen, what it could have been. And this person was like, I'm going to pay $10,000.
That's what I wish I can do on Twitter subscriptions. On Twitter subscriptions, you have to set the amount you want to get paid. Big miss, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Like big miss.
Stripe actually has a way to do pay as what you want, but not on a
Yes.
recurring basis.
That's right.
I mean, Stripe
Exactly.
has a way to do it. They just don't have a UI. Like they have these cool
Yeah.
payment links, but they can't do pay what you want on a recurring basis. And I'm sure someone could teach me how to, I mean, literally it would be probably a very simple line of code where you just like type a number in and it generates a new thing, but I'm not there yet. ChatGPT could probably write it for me.
I think pay what you want is the new add to cart, because in our world, in the creator world, because when you build all this goodwill with communities, you're going to get a bunch of whales spend a lot of money.
Yeah. The thing
Because
that I want to figure out, I don't know, I haven't seen anyone, you gave me this example with Radiohead, and maybe it'll just work. So maybe I'll test this next. But what I wanted was get it for free and then pay what you want after. Because it's hard when you're giving someone something that they don't know what the experience is like to get them to even know what it would be worth. Like, what is this spreadsheet worth to me? I don't know. So the way I did it was I made a Loom video and I walked through it all and I was like, here's exactly how it works. But what I wanted was like, it's almost like a tip at a restaurant. It's like off your card, and like, we know you're committed to pay something. And then a day later we say like, do you want to, what do you want to pay?
or it's like, what do you, from 1 to 5 stars, what do you rate this? And like 5 stars is this amount of money, 4 stars is this amount of money.
I like that. I've
Yeah.
seen some that say like the average people pay this. Like on
Mhm.
average, people pay this.
Right.
But I just think there's not a good, easy way to do the payment after the fact.
That's right.
It's almost like pay $1 and then I'm going to hit you up and ask you if you want to pay more later. Because I really only want you to pay me
But
whatever you think it's
you
worth.
can't say pay $1. It has to be, you have to remove all the friction. You have to
Yeah.
yeah, and you just have to trust that people
I'll try it.
Try it.
I got so many different spreadsheets and Notion boards that I've like researched something on. Someone
You're
emailed me
sitting on a
today.
gold mine, dude. You're literally sitting on a gold mine.
So we'll see. Stay tuned for round 2 of all of these updates.
So before we bounce, I asked you a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Do you have one question for me?
One?
One. You got one.
So I want to get your take on something that I'm dealing with, which is I have this podcast. There's a lot of great content. I've decided that each time I do a podcast on a topic, I'm going to translate that to a newsletter version of it. And I feel like newsletter and podcast I have down. And I am awful at you like creating any value for anyone on, let's call it, just for the scope of this, since I only get one question, social. I feel like you understand that world. Like, what should I be doing? Should I just ignore it and focus on the platforms that feel natural, or am I totally missing out on things? I think my instinct is I hate repurposing. Like, I don't think people want to watch a clip of a podcast as much as they want to watch something that's natively made for that platform. But at the same time, that's just like 10x the work. So am I crazy for not clipping my show and putting it on social? Am I more crazy if I pay someone to do that? Because I always see these tweets about how profitable like the same people are like, hey, use my clipping agency for $5,000 a month. It's amazing. Are the same people that are like, I love running this clipping agency that's a 90% margin business.
So on the clipping agency bit, by the way, we looked at buying some of the bigger clip agencies, and what we learned was their churn is so high.
Okay.
And their churn is so high because people don't see results. Like their sell is, hey, take this podcast. Like Chris, you're already doing a podcast. We'll just clip it up. You'll have to do no work. We're gonna put some Alex Hermosi style like captions on it, and you'll be at 100,000 YouTube subscribers in 6 months. You try it and it doesn't work. And I've been guilty of this too. Like I've tried it and it doesn't work. My take on short clips is specifically with podcasts, but it extends to other areas too, is the era of repurposing clips is basically over unless you have a crazy huge guest like a Tim Ferriss. Not worth it. On If I were you, like if you look at me, like I get, I don't know, 10 to 50 million tweet impressions every single month. And it's not even that that's a lot of impressions. It is, but the important part is I could share links. Like I haven't checked, but I probably send 50 to 100,000 visits per month at least to different things that I'm trying to promote, be it my podcast, my email newsletter, products that I want to sell. And like to me, I look at your Twitter and it's like I honestly can't believe, given that you're like who you are and what you've done and that you've built social products in the past, like that you ha-
That it's
you
such a
literally
graveyard.
and you have so much content that all you have to do is figure out how to put it in 2 lines or 1 line bangers or long form threads now. It literally, like, you probably, if I were you, what I would do is I would find a writing partner. Maybe it's your wife, maybe someone else. Just get them to ask you questions and go through a bunch of old newsletters and interviews and just try to, how can I write these ideas in 1 line, and just try to have like a thousand of them and just have 1,000 one-liners. And then what I would do is I'd probably take 20% of them or a third of them and create images specifically for those 1 line bangers to explain the points better. And also because the Twitter algorithm favors images right now.
But like infographic-y kind of images, not
Yeah.
like a random stock photo.
No, infographic-y, like images that actually are cool and interesting to look at that also help support and explain the idea that you're trying to get across. And if you did that, like look at, people who's done that in the past, like people like Jack Butcher. I don't know if you know who that is. His whole thing is visualize value. He has a community called Visualize Value, and he would do these black and white images daily on Twitter and Instagram, or almost daily, and like during the pandemic went from like 0 to 200,000 followers like pretty consistently. And it was just because he took complex ideas, he boiled it down to a simple concept and used an image to explain it. And that's exactly what you can be doing with all the hacks in your personal brand.
I love it. It's funny because I know a guy named Brian Feraldi who does this in investing,
Yeah,
and I love his content. And I'm like,
he's
why am I
great.
not?
I was chatting with him on Twitter today. He's
Oh,
awesome. And you could easily, yeah,
okay.
that's what you should be doing.
There's a higher
And
likelihood that that person that's excited to help with a project like this listens to your show than mine. So if
true.
that's you, reach out to me.
Chris
Uh,
at chrishutchins.com.
Chris at allthehacks.com.
Chris at
So
allthehacks.com. Hit him up. Also, Good idea on the podcast survey. If you're listening to this, just DM me on Twitter what you hate about this podcast and what you like about it. And what would be a cool experience to do with you. What am I missing?
What if someone's not on Twitter? You got to give them more ways to get in front of you. Maybe your audience is all on Twitter. I think my audience is like very much not on Twitter.
Or you could comment on the YouTube. On YouTube, I read all the comments. Comment
All
on
right.
this video.
Yeah.
Where could people find all the hacks and your whole empire that you're building?
All the hacks. Search it here, search it online, go to allthehacks.com. Fortunately, I think that the name is a double-edged sword. People love it. It's exciting. And brands are like, yeah, I don't know if I want to be around that brand. But for now, that's a brand. It's easy to find.
Love it. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thanks for having me.